Welcome to A Word for Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us. Each Wednesday you will find Boggs Family Ministries is here with our host, Davy Boggs. Having you along with us is a wonderful addition. Now, let's enjoy together A Word for Wednesday.
Thank you, Brother Devin, and thank you for joining us today on A Word for Wednesday. I hope you're having a good week. We are certainly blessed each and every week. Last week, I talked to you about making life decisions based on biblical principles and personal values before you get to places that put you in a hard spot for a decision. I have found if I make my decisions based on present circumstances only, I've got a good chance, and maybe even likely, I will make a less than perfect decision. It is better if I have already made that major decision based on principle before the circumstances ever come. And so last week I talked about a major life decision that Kelly and I made, and that was we were going to church. We were going to be church-going people. We were not just going to be Christian in name only or church people in name only, but we were going to church. We needed church. We needed the worship. We needed the fellowship. We needed to hear the preaching. We needed the altar services. We decided church was important enough to us that we were going no matter what. Now, we went for years with fevers and sick. We just went to church. Hey, they pray for the sick there. Now, we know since COVID, it's probably better not to go to church with a fever. But for years, we did that. We just went to church. We got sick. If we weren't throwing up, making a mess, we went to church because we were church-going people. Let's talk about another life decision, major life decision that we made ahead of time so that in the future, we didn't have to make that decision every week. We didn't have to make that decision every day. It was already made based on principle. And that decision is we made a conscious, ahead of time decision. We are going to be purposeful in our giving. We're going to be givers. Let me tell you a couple stories. I remember the very first time and the second time anyone ever handed me a $100 bill. I was a young man. My parents had, I'm sure that's where I got it. They had purchased for me a very nice Thompson Chain 4th edition Bible, a good genuine leather cover on it, very pliable, had my name printed on it. And I carried that Bible for several years and studied in that Bible for several years. We were preaching for some friends out of state, and this pastor and his wife had become close to us, and they were pastoring a small church and working jobs. And I knew they were very close on their finances. They were a young couple like we were. That's normal. And he saw my Bible and he commented that he was saving for one of those. He wanted one of those and really, really enjoyed it. I let him read it and look at it, and he really enjoyed it. I made up my mind then, I'm going to give him that Bible. And I think it was our next trip there, I presented him with that Bible. And I don't think I've ever given anybody anything that they were more appreciative of than that young man, that young preacher was, of that Bible. He was so thankful, and he made sure that he let me know it. And it was a joy to give it. Now, I went to another church and preached on that same trip, I think just a Sunday. And there were connections between those two churches, and one of the members there had heard that I gave this young pastor, whom he liked, I gave that young pastor a Bible. And so this church member came to me and said, I heard you gave Brother so-and-so that Bible. I said, yes, I did. He said, that was very generous. Very generous. They have a very hard time, and I know he's going to appreciate that Bible. He said, here, I want you to go buy you another one. And he gave me $100 bill. Now, keep in mind, when I'm first married, I'm making $4 an hour. So $100 is still a lot of money, but it was even more money to us at that time. And he gave me that $100 and said, I want you to go buy another Bible. And I could replace that Bible. At that time, you could buy a very, very nice Bible with a very good cover for probably $75 or $80. So he not only gave me enough money, but a little extra. And I never forgot it. I never forgot how that made me feel. Several years later, fast forward, we were evangelizing, probably 5 years later, 6 years later. We were at a very small church. Now, in the early 90s, if you preached a full week of revival, Sunday through Friday or Sunday through Sunday, $300 was a really good offering to receive for that week's work. And I was at a small church. I probably didn't get $150, which was very normal for us in those days. And we made it. It was enough for us to make it. A pastor was visiting family. He was on vacation visiting family in that area, and he came to church with them there that Sunday morning and heard me preach. I didn't know this pastor. I had heard his name, but I didn't know him. And as we walked out the door, he gave me a Pentecostal handshake and slipped a $100 bill in my hand. Now, he's on vacation. He's enjoying family. He comes to church, and he blesses me. He said, thank you for preaching to me today. Go buy your wife a nice dinner, whatever. You know, he just gave me that $100 bill. I was amazed. Second time anybody had ever given me a $100 bill. I remember how thankful I was on both those occasions, how thankful I was, how overwhelmed I was, how happy I was, how joyous I was. $100. I mean, I'm getting almost my week's wages in one handshake. Wow, what an amazing blessing that was. But here's what I want you to see. I was blessed to receive that, but I have found out it feels 100 times better to be the guy given that $100 bill. Now, I don't know if either one of those men could afford to give $100. I don't know that either one of them had, 10 or 20 $100 bills tucked back in their wallet. They might have been giving me out of sacrifice rather than out of abundance. I don't know. But I know one thing. It feels so much better to be that guy giving than it does to be the guy receiving. Jesus said, Paul quoted Jesus. We don't know where Jesus said that, but we know he said it because Paul quoted him. He said, Jesus said, it is more blessed to give than it is to receive. And that is a true statement. Now, we have been the recipient of giving many, many, many times. We work in full-time ministry. We go into a church. We preach most of the time Sunday morning through Friday night, sometimes Sunday through Wednesday, sometimes Sunday through Sunday. We give our best. We sing, we preach, we pray in the altar, we fellowship, we socialize, we do everything we can to be effective in the ministry. And as a result, those churches, the people in the churches give through the church to us a revival offering, and that's our pay. That's how we make it. People give in offerings, and the churches in turn give those offerings to us. We don't charge. We don't tell the church, I've got to have $500 or I've got to have $1,000. We've never done that. We're never going to do that. We just go and they give free will to us, and it always meets our needs. And we are so thankful for that. And we've had others give into our ministry. Some give on a regular basis. Some give here, some give there, some give to a cause. We want to help the school in Nigeria, or we want to help this, or we want to help feed people, whatever you're doing at the time. And we are so, so thankful of that. God bless individuals, families, and churches that have given overwhelmingly to us to keep us on the road and to help us in mission projects and whatever else we got going. Thank God for that. But I want to tell you something. It is a whole lot more fun to be the one giving than it is to be the one receiving. Thank God we receive, thank God, but we receive it with open hands. We don't close our fist around it. We receive it with open hands, because if God wants that somewhere else, we want to give it somewhere else. I heard Brother Lester Moore say years and years ago, and it's happened to me since then, walking across the camp meeting grounds, and somebody says, "Here, Brother Moore, here, I want you to take this for it's an offering for you." And he stuck it in his pocket, and he said, before I could get across the ground and even find a place to count it, God said, "Hey, slip that money to that preacher over there. He needs it." He said, "I didn't even get to keep 90% of it. I thought I'd give 10% of it, but I gave 100% of it." And we've done that. Didn't even get to count it. Just give it, because it is so much more blessed to give than it is to receive. But we didn't always know that. We were a young couple, not making much money, struggling every week, like young couples do, like probably young couples should, so we can learn to appreciate hard work, learn to appreciate budgeting, spending money correctly. And so it's not a bad place to be in. One friend of mine said, "It's not a shame to be poor, it's just mighty unhandy." And man, never has been a truer statement spoken. It is mighty unhandy to be poor, but it's probably good for us to learn some of those things. It certainly was good for Kelly and I, those years spent trying to learn how to handle money and make money and treat money and give money. A couple of years into our marriage, I read my way in and preached my way into tithing. I read it right in the Bible. It's a biblical concept. It's not part of the law. Tithes were given 400 years before the law was given. It is a biblical concept of giving. 10% of everything I take in automatically belongs to God. Now, that was not an easy pill for me to swallow, but I read it in the Bible, and I talked to Kelly about it, and bless her heart, she was 100% for it. If it's in the Bible, let's do it. Now, at that time, I was making $7 an hour, usually working 40 hours a week. That's $280. And so my tithe was $28, 10% of what I made, $280, $28. I thought to myself, and I said to Kelly, how in the world can we give $28 a week? Wow. How can you give that much? And what would the church do with all that money? No, I didn't think that, but I did think about how could we give it? But we just did it. We decided we're going to do it. And many years later, 20 years ago, we decided we're going to give 20%. We're going to give 10% on our revival offerings, and then we're going to give another 10% into other ministries. We're not going to grab a hold of what God gives us and hold it real close and let it decay and rust right in our spirits. We're going to give some of that away. And so for 20 years, every revival offering, we've been given 10% of that as in addition to our tithe to other evangelists and other ministries. And we've helped churches buy PA equipment. And we've helped preachers buy trucks and trailers. And we've helped preachers buy gasoline and diesel fuel. And we've helped build churches in Nigeria and a school in Nigeria and support the school and on and on and on. And not all of it, but much of that comes from that second 10%. You cannot outgive God. Brother John Gabbard said, God is not going to allow you to be in debt to him. He is going to find a way to give back to you. It's not always financially. No. He could give it back in good health or strength or a good running car that should have been in the junkyard years ago, but it's still going and saving you money. God is a giver, and he loves cheerful giving. That planned giving has made such a difference in our lives, because there have been times, not recently, but there have been times that we said, if we give what we're supposed to give, we're going to be really short on our grocery budget, or we're going to be really close on our utility bills, or we're going to be really close on our payment, or we're really going to be close on having enough gas money to get from here to there. We're going to have to find a way to tighten the belt a little bit if we give what we have purpose to give. But we didn't have to make that decision. I didn't have to say, Kelly, should you really write that check? I didn't have to say, Kelly, should I really do this? Because we had already made the decision based on biblical principles and personal values way back years ago. The decision had already been made. When I feel the least little bit flicker in my mind, you ought to slip a $20 bill in that person's hand. You ought to slip a $100 bill in that hand. You ought to write a check to that evangelist. You really need, when that pastor told about doing that project, you really need to get in on that. You need to write a check for that. And the moment it pops into my mind, I don't have to say, can I afford it? We just do it. Now, we live on a budget. I'm not being crazy here. We do live on a budget. But giving is the number one thing on the budget. Tithing and planned giving and spontaneous giving, those are the number one things on the budget. Everything else is taken care of when you purposely give. Now, everybody gives at a different level. I understand that. I'm not pushing you. I'm not preaching at you. I'm not even talking about giving, really. I'm talking about making those decisions ahead of time so that when we come to this point, those decisions are much easier made. If I make the decision based on circumstances, I'm likely to make a bad decision. But if I make the decision based on principle, years ago, the decision's already been made. So when the circumstances conspire against me, it doesn't matter. I'm giving anyway. I'm going to church anyway. And any number of things. Insert right here. Make the decision before this so that circumstances do not conspire against us to make a bad decision. I'm going to spend some more time on this. I hope you'll join me. That's our word for Wednesday. See you next week.
That is our word for Wednesday. We are so glad that you've spent a few minutes with us today. If you've been touched by today's episode, please share it with your friends and family. We welcome your questions or comments below or by email. You can find the email address in the description, along with a link to Mile Markers, the website for Boggs Family Ministries. Also, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thank you again, and we hope to see you next Wednesday.